Okay, let's go ahead and get started. It's not quite 1700, but pretty close to it. This is 18 February 2020, Tuesday, which means we're going to be covering LDR 300. This is week 6, so getting very close. All right, some things that need to make sure we take a look at is I've updated all your grades. So start taking a hard look at what we put in, what I put in. Sorry, didn't mean to talk to you in the royal we. So if you go into your Moodle in the grade book, you should be able to find where those have been entered. And for me, I get a grade report that looks like this. If you are seeing zeros or blanks, it means I don't have a grade for you for that event. If it's a 0, that means nothing got turned in. So I know we've talked, some of you and I have talked. Some of you, excuse me. Sorry, got a little bit of the crud here. Some of you have indicated a plan to make up, or not make up, but get that work in, and I've agreed to that. So continue on with your program. Otherwise, if there's a 0, then we need to make sure that we fully adjudicated that. Okay, if this is a case where you didn't turn it in, then there's not much we could do about that. Okay, if something was beyond your control, an exigency of some type, or something that you want to talk to me about, then let's certainly do that. Okay, and we need to do that quickly. Okay, before the term ends, most certainly. Okay, excuse me. So week 6 is in Moodle. It's highlighted for you. All right, and first is you've got a couple discussion questions. As always, this is for chapters, 11 and 12, right? Okay, so chapter 11, we're talking about leaders vary in sensitivity and openness to others. This is referring you to exhibit 11.7, which is the stages of personal diversity awareness, whether you think you are at stage 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So what I want you to do is think of a leader that you worked for, served under, participated with, whatever. At what stage personal diversity awareness was that leader? Okay. And then using what you read on the text, pages 346 to 349, and some basic self-reflection, what stage of diversity awareness are you? Okay, so I'm curious to see what you think. In a classroom scenario, we would all, I'd write it up on the board, and we'd all have a good time kind of getting a sense of where everybody was at. And generally, typically, what you'll see is a lot of people are a little tougher on themselves, perhaps than they need to be, and thus rate themselves a lower stage than probably what they really are. And then others are, they think they walk on water, and so rate themselves so much higher than what they probably should or what they are. But the key on this is to understanding a lot of aspects of diversity awareness, not the least of which is that the variations in it are incredible. Okay, one might say they're exceptionally tolerant, but then find a situation where they are not so much. All right, so this becomes a lot more difficult than just a standard diversity is good pitch that you get. Okay, a lot of it depends on, again, what you've read, particularly in that in your text. in chapter 11. So make sure you go in and look hard at that. Make sure you know the terms, okay? And then we'll go from there. Discussion question number 2 is a little off the wall, but I kind of like it. Lord Acton, who was a British historian and politician and commentator, if you will, on the world, expressed in the late 19th century a letter to Bishop Mandel Crichton in 1887. And he penned the famous line, "Power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely." In other words, this suggests that a person's sense of morality, lessens as his or her power increases. So I want you to give me a couple of reasons why you would agree or disagree with Lord Acton on his statement. You agree that power tends to corrupt, and why? Give me 2 reasons. Or you disagree. Power doesn't tend to corrupt, and why? Okay? And then, given this idea, would one think it's ethical for a leader to try to increase their power? If they know that power corrupts, should you try to gain more power? And then I just want to get your reasoning for that, okay? And this is going to be just interesting because you're not going to be able to find the answer in the text, although I think you should read and make sure you're familiar with power. But this is just more of a little insight into your character as I ask the question. I'll be curious to see what you come up with. Okay. Excuse me, for your self-reflective exercises, self-insight, you're 11.3 on page 342 and 12.3 on page 379, okay? Again, we go through these. And that will continue for a couple more weeks, okay? And then we have the quiz, all right? It'll open on Wednesday and it closes at 1500 on Sunday. No changes there. Now look what happens to you here, so be careful, forewarned. Next week is week 7, okay? And you have the normal things due, right? You have your discussion and you have your self-reflective summary, okay? And then we get into week 8 and the quiz, by the way. And then we get into week 8, the same thing, discussion, self-reflective, week 8, and your leadership effectiveness paper. So make sure you understand that the self-reflective summary reports is what's going to build and inform your leadership effectiveness paper, okay? So you may want to get that week 8 self-reflective summary report done early enough, maybe towards start of week 7, and as you do week 7s, and then that way you've got it for your paper. Or you decide you're going to write your paper with what you've got now, okay? And that's up to you. I think you should, give it a shot, but we'll see what we got, okay? All right. Excuse me again. All right, now you're going to turn in your paper to here, turn it in, okay, which is the blue document with the red arrow on it, okay? Those of you that are not familiar with Turn It In, it's a great tool. It's a very useful tool, okay? And it looks different than the normal assignment forms that you perhaps are used to by turning in things, okay? It shows up and has a start due post date, okay, and the like. You will upload it, okay, in your normal framework, okay? And then what happens is within 24 hours, your paper will be reviewed by the software and turn it in. and it's reviewing the database that it utilizes, which is almost a worldwide. It involves already posted publications and published research papers, and it includes papers that have been uploaded to Moodle. Okay, so what happens is Turnitin is going to scan your paper, and it's going to identify phrases that are familiar or similar to what is found in the database. Now, in and of itself, this is not bad, nor is it good. Okay, all it's doing is identifying. So, as an example, if you have quoted the text with the definition, then that quote and portion will show up and turn it in as a quote-unquote identifier. As long as you properly cited the work, then there's no problem. And in this particular case, where this is a concept or a paper in which I've told you to define leadership concepts, then I would expect to find similarity in your paper. Okay, so the way I guess I'm getting about this is that in the paper, having a 100% similar is not a good percentage. That means 100% of what you wrote is in somebody else's paper. That's not good, okay? 0% is not good either. That means nothing that you wrote or put in this paper is similar, which means you didn't use any definitions, even though I told you to. So what you want is somewhere in between. And as you upload and look at that paper, make sure that you properly cited work that is not your own. Okay, again, the difference between a correct research paper and plagiarism is the proper use of citations. Quotation marks for direct lifts, right? End of paragraph, citation in brackets for taking a theme, but rewording it slightly to fit your own style. If you have any questions on this, then certainly seek out help through either the University of Mount Olive Writing Center, your APA format guidelines, University of Purdue or Purdue University, I think, and some others, and or talk to your instructor. Okay. I shouldn't have to explain that any more than I already have. Most of you know how to write a paper. You wouldn't be here if you did. Excuse me. But that's the extent of it. All right. And then that'll end our course. Okay, remember your paper, your final paper is due on Sunday, the 8th of March. Okay, so you got an extra day there to get your paper in, because remember, normally I tell you to get your summary reports due in by Saturday. Okay, and then here at the bottom of Moodle, don't forget to take the end of course survey. Okay, when you do that, you're going to go all the way up here to the top of Moodle. Your page may be slightly different, but I don't think so in this particular case. And you'll see smart evals highlighted. I'm circling it with my cursor now. Take the eval. I assure you that the dean reads them. The instructor, we do not see them until they're shared with us. If you're, and whatever you need to say, by all means say it. What I hope, though, is that your comments will be specifically targeted towards improving the course as a whole, the textbook, the framework, okay? If it's an issue with me personally, I hope by this point you've already addressed it and that we've talked about it, okay? Just as you we want feedback at the end of the course to come as a surprise. So too, your instructors don't necessarily like surprises either. There's no harm, no foul. I don't react and start targeting those who cross me. I'm kidding in this regard, but I'm serious on this note. There is no retribution, okay? There's nothing I can do to hurt you anyway. The key on it, though, is as a leader, you would appreciate timely inputs and corrections from those that you are around, and so does your instructor. And the other piece is give me a chance to fix it. Okay, we certainly don't want to be miserable for an entire week course. I hope nobody here was. Okay. All right. Having said all that, again, it's your conscience be your guide. Certainly, candor is appreciated, and then let's go on from there. All right. Let's change our share and talk about the slides I have for you for tonight. Okay, so this is just kind of funny. We talked about last week a story needs a start, a middle, and an end, right? Okay, and that's what this graphic on the left demonstrates. We make sure that we say in here that there's also a lot of ways to get around this. Good to see you, Alexander. This is a former student that came by. I am, thank you. It's great to see you too. Oh boy. Well, I'm glad you are. You're the right person to help out so many. I don't doubt it. It's great seeing you too. Thank you very much. Anyway, so I just thought this was a funny graphic because you have pre-story, prelude for context, and too many details. Hey, what was I talking about? Something I just remembered. Oh, by the way, let me go to a semi-related side story, and then finally get to the end of the story. So if you're talking about storytelling or talking about writing a paper, both are the same, okay? Every paper should have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And you're telling a story should have a beginning, a middle, and an end, all right? Just had Valentine's Day, so I thought the other graphic was semi-timely, and it was just kind of funny. All right, this is something I shared with you last week, the term of yondering, somehow, some way getting to where you were heading with your paper. This gets back to the graphic I just showed you. That's why a position statement is so critical, okay? It defines and organizes your essay. Okay, still within the same framework. Make sure that you're checking your paper, not just spell checking, but also proofreading, so that we don't have any of these homophones, and we don't have some of these examples that gets to be a little bit of a chuckle factor. On your paper, your final papers, I read 3 times in total. Each paper I go through the first time, checking for your position statement, looking at organization, getting a general feel for what you've done. The second reading is more intense, where I'll go in and I go ahead and look for the grammar, the rhetoric, the transitions, the sentence structures, your evidence, the argument, and the like. Okay. The third reading is more for overall context. It's for me to determine how effective you were in your paper, how you've addressed the requirements of the paper based on the rubric that I've already sent to you. Okay, and then I write the final grade in. There are times I've found that I may be grading paper and I'm a little harsher on it than I need to be for some reason. There are other times where I'm a lot easier than I need to be. So what this does is gets it into a pretty good sweet spot, I think. It is more reflective of what I think you've done. Okay, I can assure you that I read your papers. Okay, I will check your references, and even though I'm not an English major, I do know some general rules, and so I can tell you when a sentence is awkward or to run on, or that we haven't used the proper word or spelling in the line. Okay. All right. Quiz number 5, week 5 quiz. Wow, everybody did a tremendous job. Generally, 15 A's, 5 A minuses, and a B minus in there. Everybody took the exam. That's the first time I've had all 22 of you take the exam. So my thanks for that. A very good job. Looks like a couple questions caught us. Number 6 and number 10 had the most, 3 people each. Missed those. So again, no one question seems to have tripped everybody up. It appears nothing was too hard. Let's see, for timing wise, it looks like everybody had enough time. The fastest was in 3 minutes and 2 seconds. That's crazy. Somebody really plowed through that. And the slowest took all 30 minutes. So I'm going to assume, correct me otherwise, that you had enough time and everything was okay on the quiz. Okay. So let's take a look. Question number 6, blank refers to the process of influencing how others construct meaning and comprehend the organization and their place in it. Your options were sense giving, sensodyne, which is a toothpaste, navigation, and Navajo-ness. So already there's a couple detractors right there that could come right out, okay? So it gets down to sense giving and navigation. In this particular case, since we're talking about constructing meaning and comprehending organization and place, then that's clearly sense giving. And that's on page 264 of your text. So I think that one pretty clear. All right, the other one was question 10. So people slip into blank when the desire for harmony outweighs concerns over decision quality. Okay, so we're getting into what is called groupthink. Right, page 305 explains it. Okay, where everybody sits around and instead of rocking the boat, we want to get this meeting over with. We want to appease the boss. We don't want to look like we're our own person. And the concern for decision quality tends to go out the window because of this desire for harmony. So again, groupthink being the best of the available 4 answers. Certainly is not concept mapping. It's not lateral thinking. It's certainly not brainstorming. Remember, brainstorming is a creative technique where you're trying to develop options, okay, as quickly and as vibrantly as you can. There is no judgments placed on the answers within brainstorming. In this case of the definition, the judgment is made, and that is we're worried more about getting along than we are about the quality of the decision, and that's clearly groupthink. This is a whole host of historical examples which indicate this to be a huge problem that can cause some very impressive failures. Some that come to mind, predominantly the Bay of Pigs invasion is a case where groupthink overtook the early stages of the Kennedy administration. In that way, a lot of people thought that a lot of the decision making or a lot of the work had already been decided. So it's really tough to execute somebody else's plan. So we kind of give President Kennedy a bit of a bye on that one. My years in GM by Sloan, which we're talking about, the former CEO of General Motors, famously came up with a technique where if he had a staff meeting with all his directors and everybody was in agreement, he would stop the discussion. He would say, okay, at this point, we obviously don't know enough about the problem or about the situation, whatever it is they were deciding, to make a good decision. So everybody go back, take a hard look at this topic, and then we'll reconvene. So here's a case where he had everybody in agreement. It would have been easy to take the decision, drive on, thinking you had a success, when in fact, he was able to note it as a potential failure. For those of you that are movie buffs, recent Brad Pitt movie that came out a couple years ago, maybe a few, World War Z. You may recall in there the scene where it was the Israeli 10th man, I think it was, okay? Brad Pitt is in Israel trying to figure out why the nation state got a jump start on building a wall to keep people out, based on, and then come to find out it was based on a very obscure email that came out of India. Okay, and it was explained in there that the Israelis have gone to this technique years ago for their own survival. As a nation state formed in 1948, they didn't have the luxury of being a nation state for very long before they came under attack multiple times. 7-Day War, the Golan Heights, it was just a number of series of wars that got fought on their land. And so what was developed out was the command element for that nation. If there are 9 people in agreement to what is happening, then it's the duty of the 10th man to be counter and develop the arguments against it. So even if that person agrees with the other 9, it is his or her duty to disagree. So something to take a hard look at in your own organization. Okay, again, a balance between effectiveness and being able to make decisions and go forward, and having that almost animosity or antagonism, that conflict within the organization to gain the benefit without hurting ultimately, okay? Remember, conflict is inevitable. Combat is an option, okay? It's how we handle the conflict, how we work through it. It's critical piece, and you'll get more of this in latter courses as you progress through the University of Mount Olive. All right, so enough of the quiz here. The rest of what we got is talking about chapter 11. We're talking about definitions of diversity, right? Again, these are definitions that can come right straight into your paper if this is one of the concepts that you're writing on. Okay. We talked about Women as leaders. We, in the text, start talking about issues such as ethnocentrism, prejudice, stereotypes, discrimination, glass ceiling, all of these aspects. Okay, even get an exhibit on how do you shake hands. Okay, if it's a firm grip, North American, it's a soft grip, then that's probably more British. It's interesting that this comes out, but I have no doubt about their research. Okay. We also want to make sure we understand cultural intelligence, which is the ability to use reasoning and observation to interpret unfamiliar situations and come up with the appropriate behavioral response. Okay. And then I mentioned to you earlier, one of your discussion questions, the stages of personal diversity awareness. Stage 1, defense. 2, minimizing differences. 3, acceptance. 4, adaptation. 5, integration. Also your highest level. Where are you on this? Is what we're going to ask, and it'll be interesting to see what we come up with. Okay. All right. And then we get into chapter 12, which is all about power and influence. Okay, your ability to influence based on the power structure that you have and that which you use. All leaders have power. Not all leaders have the same power. Some power is soft, some power is hard. Some power is based on what they have on their collar, which is a legitimate power. There may be power that is brought out in different aspects. For example, referent power. Okay, you generally follow somebody because you like how he or she treats you and acts. Okay, think of the power of your pastor at church. Okay, there is, of course, charismatic power, which has good points and bad points, and the like. Make sure you understand the difference between transactional and transformational leadership, and you'll do fine on these chapters. Okay, so 5:32. I don't think anybody's dialed in. I'll double check. Yep, doesn't look like it. That's fine. Again, this is for you, however you see fit to use it. I will go ahead and close it down. Normally we go for 40 minutes, but I think we'll end it a little bit early tonight, subject to anybody's concerns. Let's share my screen. There we go. And again, make sure you take a look. I've got your grades in and the like. All right, here's a question. Nope, I thought I had an email. Okay, again, hey, thanks very much. Wish you all a good evening, and we'll see you next time.